Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Bravo Outsider Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Midwinter, and with me as always is my co-host, Dylan Ferguson. Dylan, how's it going?
Episode 12 already. Wow, yeah, doing great.
Yeah,
Gonna
crazy.
crack open a Guinness with you guys here.
Oh.
Slovakia. You know, I like to get those thematic drinks in. This was a dangerous one to carry in my backpack. I was considering trying to replicate what Katie's hair of the dog hangover drink was, which appeared to be White Claw and Tito's.
I thought it was white.
Been too horrible.
I thought it was White Claw and Kool-Aid. I was not sure about
I thought there was a Tito's bottle that she was pouring in there, but I might be wrong about that.
Pretty sure there's a full-on bottle of Tito's.
Yeah. I understand why Gordo was judging her for that. I think even Lala was judging her for that. You know, when you're getting judged by somebody who walked in wearing an Axl Rose Halloween costume, you've made a bad choice.
I like how she immediately had to clarify, I never do this, and Lala was like, yeah, you never do this.
Let the record state.
Yeah. Each week we bring on a guest who doesn't follow Bravo, make them watch the shows, and then get their takes. This week we're pleased to have joining us Sean O'Rourke.
Ever danced with the booger wolf in the pale moonlight?
Nice.
Awesome. Well, Sean, you aren't exactly a complete Bravo noob like some of our past guests. You've actually watched some Housewives before. A long time ago, your fandom has kind of been mostly dormant. Is that right?
Yeah. I had my phase 10 years ago, and I was a big Orange County and a little bit of New York guy. And a little bit of that early, I think, first season Beverly Hills. From which I only remember a scene of Kelsey Grammer's ex-wife describing his body hair. But since then, nothing.
Camille, the legend. Yeah. Okay, so you hadn't really watched any of Jersey or Vanderpump Rules before then, right?
No. I recognize Teresa and I want to say Melissa on Jersey. I've maybe seen a little bit of it. And then Vanderpump Rules, I only know Lisa.
Have you noticed any way that the Bravo content has evolved since 10 years ago when you watched?
It feels very similar to me, but I've aged, so now it just Vanderpump Rules just seems very exhausting to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, just watching them and I mean, some of the people on Vanderpump Rules are older than me, and the fact that they're able to just go out and go so hard.
Yeah, don't they mention that Tom Schultz is 40 or something?
Yeah, yeah. Schwartz and Sandoval are in their 40s, I believe.
Yeah, that seems unsustainable. It's a heroic effort.
Yeah. The real casualties are your sperm after that. You gotta look out for that morphology.
Use the term jizz.
Sorry, yeah, I'm not up on the technical jargon. Wreaks havoc on your jizz results.
Yeah. I want to try something a little bit new that we haven't done before we get into the highlights here. At least for the next couple weeks. I want to kick things off with a quick roundtable discussion about a topic and sort of how it relates to reality TV. This week, I wanted to start with the term guilty pleasure, which is a term that I've heard both people that watch reality TV and people who don't use to describe it. So just to kind of give my thoughts before opening up the floor, and feel free to disagree with me here, but I really kind of hate hearing that term used to describe shows like Real Housewives and Vanderpump Rules. I feel I don't necessarily hate that term itself, but when you apply it to shows like Real Housewives and Vanderpump Rules, it just feels steeped in misogyny. I think I don't think that people that use it necessarily are being intentionally misogynist, but I think it comes from this societal tendency to be dismissive of any femme coded content and just kind of like make it seem like it's less worthy of serious consideration in comparison to like male targeted content, um, which kind of like reinforces the double standard within entertainment, because like the language that we use regarding reality TV is drastically different, or the language we use regarding femme coded content is drastically different than how people talk about like comic book movies or sports. Sean, Dylan, your thoughts on that, or the term in general?
Well, I always want to say that like I shouldn't take any guilt and pleasure, but there's like a deep-seated part of me that was raised Catholic that can't separate the terms. But I think it mostly boils down to like aesthetic judgments and moral ones, and like those often I don't conflate. Like I don't see why you would put a moral judgment into watching Real Housewives or Vanderpump Rules or anything else. It's only when you get into like I don't know if I were like signing up for Roman Polanski's Patreon or something, then maybe there's like a way that those conflate. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me to feel guilt in taking in something you're enjoying. But it does seem really more directed at, like you say, femme coded stuff. Like, because this is, for example, this is exactly the same as professional wrestling, which I love.
Yeah.
And that gets, people may think it's a little silly, but I feel like it does not at all get the same kind of aspersions cast on it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I agree. Like I feel like I mostly agree that you shouldn't feel guilty about something that you take pleasure in, but at the same time, like guilty pleasure is like a term that I would apply to, you know, my love of Hallmark movies, which is something that I like also really enjoy at Christmas time, watching these Hallmark movies. But I do consider that more of a guilty pleasure, and like not because those are also like kind of like femme coded, but I feel like when you're watching something like Real Housewives, I just think like the way that it's framed for the audience expects a lot more like critical thinking. Like there's I feel guilty about enjoying Hallmark movies because I think that um it places forward values that are um like dated and like wrong, and like just like overall just like needs updating and just kind of icky. Um, and that's not to say that Housewives doesn't also do that, but I think that the way that it's framed for the audience is different. There's like this expectation that the audience is, thinking about these things critically, and because you are constantly reevaluating like the positions of the players within Housewives. I think you are thinking, a bit more broadly and more like a more worldly sense about like, it's like, oh, okay, this person is saying like Ramona is saying whatever Ramona singer is saying this week, which is obviously gonna just be so like backwards and dated. But like you've got that sense, you're operating critically as you're consuming it, whereas Hallmark movies, you're supposed to just be like feed in the warm fuzzies, and
Just empty
don't think
calories.
too critically. Yeah, exactly.
Right, but then you're also talking about like how you're expected to watch something versus how you're actually watching it, and I feel like the way that you are watching it is probably a little bit different than what you're describing as the expectation, and I think that's part of the reason why, for me, like you guys, I don't like the term guilty pleasures at all. If somebody wants to use it to describe the warm fuzzies they have curling up on the couch with a tub of Haagen-Dazs watching their shows or whatever, like awesome, like you do you. But the term for me is something that I buck at, I buck and whinny like a scared horse. It's like that in the same category as calling something entertainment, not art, or calling something a movie, not a film. Any attempt to just pull out the velvet ropes and try to cordon off some art as like, the acceptable, respectable bit, and others as the disreputable ones, is just always, to me, I have that reaction of it being just kind of antithetical to the whole project, and just very rooted in that the bourgeois project of trying to turn your artistic tastes into class signifiers, treating the kind of art that you choose to engage with the same way you would treat like the clothes you wear, or like this Ames chair I bought or whatever. That's fine for furniture and your haircuts and what color you paint your door. Like those things are kind of for that. But I just think that you should be interacting with art in a different way because it's serving a different purpose. And when I'm going and sitting in front of a screen and like a content hog and just, getting my fix, I don't really have a trouble turning off the inner censor or whatever is making me see myself as a subject in like the social sphere. Like, I'm as subject to super ego pressures as the next motherfucker, but I don't have a trouble like turning that off when I watch art, and maybe I'd have to thank like my brain chemistry for that or something. But I get that some people will like struggle with that. It can be a thing that's maybe easier said than done. But I think it's something that's worth trying to do. And what bugs me is when people, instead of trying to buck whatever internalized censor they have in their head, telling them what you should or should not do because it's a signifier of your class aspirations, or like what should be considered correct or not, when you're not only not trying to turn that off but are embracing it, is something that I'm not really okay with, because it just seems to be against the whole idea of art, which you should be going into, I think, as something that will expand your horizons, and as something that you can allow to try to let you think about the world in a way that doesn't have you as a subject deeply invested into it. Not saying that it's not like involving yourself in like a social project by engaging with art, but if you turn off the super ego pressure, you are. Sorry about the Freudian turns. I didn't mean to come on your show and start talking like Slavoj Žižek or something. In the Vanderpump Rules, the dog Gordo is super ego. Watch. Okay, and so on. But I just think if you're from the bat letting that inner censor decide whether or not you're even allowing yourself to watch something, or allowing it yourself to watch it with an open mind, instead of feeling like you have to force your perspective into the means of watching it that you're told is the only way you're allowed to watch it. Like, I'm only allowed to watch this on the surface. I'm only allowed to be entertained, as people say, because I've been told that's all that this is good for. If you're already setting up those barriers for yourself, well, you're missing an opportunity to maybe rewire the way you think, and to maybe engage with a fuller range of artistic experience. And I get that there's a little high associated too with, strapping on the rough collar and being the Puritan censorious critic, and getting to decide what's good and what's right and what's not. But I don't think you're gaining anything by that, and you are potentially amputating artistic experiences that could be really nourishing if you allowed yourself to.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I wonder if there is like a discrepancy between, people who, when they're discussing this, like their fandom of Bravo shows and use the term guilty pleasure, whether they actually like internally consider it a guilty pleasure, or if that's just, how they label it when they talk about it. And, I think I probably have to acknowledge a little bit of privilege as someone who identifies as a straight male. I don't really have to worry about entering into any like conversation and articulating my love for Bravo, as I often do, and worry about, whether or not my peers in the workplace are going to continue to take me seriously. I feel like there's, probably a lot of women, do have to be a lot more guarded, especially in like male dominated fields. So I do expect that there is, a discrepancy between the way that people talk about it and the way they actually consume the art.
Yeah, almost like the phrase guilty pleasure can be sort of an insulation from criticism of like crappy dudes.
Just like, insulation from criticism in general, I think. And, I think, I think, it's, you have to do what you have to do in order to like get by based on the, the circumstances that you're in. So I don't think that anyone is, um, propping up the patriarchy by like discussing reality TV as a guilty pleasure. But I do think, as and one of the things that I want to, do with this podcast is enable people that do have that privilege to speak more openly about, the artistic and cultural merit of these shows, so that um so that people's minds hopefully open to the validity of this programming and not be so dismissive of it. And um that's all my thoughts on the term guilty pleasure. Did you guys have any final thoughts before we move on to Vanderpump Rules highlights?
Maybe just in terms of like artistic merit of stuff like this, I think I only feel guilty if I'm engaging with art content, whatever, talkies. If I feel like I've wasted my time. And I don't get that at all with Real Housewives or Vanderpump Rules, because there's quite a lot to chew on, like in terms of editing and how they're shooting it, technical stuff, and then in terms of how they're constructing these narratives and how that kind of can flow between reality and producer input or scripting and that. So it's a very like mentally engaging watch. It doesn't feel just like TV candy to me.
Yeah, I think it's obviously like very like stimulating, which doesn't necessarily make something like great art in itself. But um, I think like it is a medium that doesn't get the credit that it deserves, because like there are roles within production that I think like don't really shine as much from a storytelling perspective in other forms of art, like, or other forms of, like movies, or your standard narrative television. I don't think you see the hands of a producer as strongly. I don't think you see the hands of an editor as strongly from a like storytelling point of view. um but with reality TV and like these Bravo shows specifically, you very clearly see it, and like you see how much like nuance it takes, and how like how skilled like of a crafts person it takes in order to be effective with this type of canvas.
Yeah, totally. I have so many questions about the technical process, by the way, or the production process when we get into this.
Awesome. Well, yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk Vanderpump Rules. This was a great, fantastic episode in my opinion. Sean, do you want to give your sort of first impressions of the cast of Vanderpump Rules?
Yeah. I did have to watch this twice to like really get a sense of everybody. I feel like James
need to separate your satchels from your Schwartzes.
Yeah. I feel like, does Satchel like say stuff in other episodes? Because in this one, he doesn't. Sort of
he doesn't blink. Yeah.
So it's a bit of like nominative determinism. He's just a bag on a chair.
He was just introduced at the tail end of the last episode, so
he still hasn't had a line in either of episodes, right? Okay. We still haven't heard his voice, I don't think.
Because he's like a new boyfriend.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think so.
I feel like James is possibly a genius.
Yes.
Like he's
Mark
like
one up.
James
Well,
he's a cartoon character,
Scoring
like
it up.
become Flash. And I don't know if
Yeah.
like he is just a genius for the medium, or if some producer is brilliantly exploiting a clear personality disorder. I know I'm not trying to be like ableist or anything here, but um, there's something being pushed there.
Yeah,
So
there is
I think James is
somebody who
amazing.
really thinks James is a genius is James.
And me. You know what? I think he's like excellent. He's like, he's
He's such a good
Jax
heel.
2.0. Like I think like
Wait, Jax from Mortal
Jack
Kombat?
No, Jax from like early seasons of Vanderpump
Okay.
Rules, who was like the self-described number one guy in the group, and he was like, just a very like awful person that was very interesting to watch on TV. But like James has these like likable moments that like kind of like pop through. Like
I haven't
he's
seen any of
way
those yet.
he's way funnier.
I
He's
haven't,
way
and I've been
funnier
watching
than
10
Jack.
seasons.
Yeah. He's way funnier than Jax, and I think like I think with Jax, like he would lash out, but he was very good at like shielding the emotional vulnerability that was like causing that sort of lash out. James is not as good at that, and I think it kind of like it endears him to me a little bit. Like you can kind of see the humanity underneath him. So like even though yes he's like terrible and like toxic and abusive, that doesn't disqualify him from being like likable to me as a reality character. And I think he's super funny. I think he's got really good like one liners that come from a very like distinct voice. Like he's got a very distinct voice in confessionals and when he like talks, where if he quips in the confessional booth, it doesn't sound like it's fed to him from a producer. It just like is him fired up and like on a roll, and just like I don't know, he's got kind of a natural funniness to him that I really appreciate.
It's kind of like the ideal reality TV subject.
Yeah, I think so.
He would like, again with the wrestling, he would have been such a good like cowardly heel if he had gone another path, and that's exactly what he is, at least from what I've seen of this episode of Vanderpump. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like James. I like James. I think he's very good on the show.
Yeah.
The two Toms both seem like they both seem like they'd be in a band that I would go see and hate, and Sandoval would be the singer and Schultz would be the drummer.
Oh my god, you got
well,
it.
have I got news for you?
I mean, not the drummer part, but
yeah,
oh yeah.
you can go and check out. Tom Sandoval is
Sandoval-
Tom Sandoval in the Most Extras, and it's like this like cover band basically.
And he had a band before that. What were they called? The band that did the Let's Touch in Public song?
Charles McMansion.
Right. With the guy who became like one of the QAnon leaders afterwards.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to be pulling that up on Bandcamp later. Yeah, I did find there's one thing about Schultz I find very relatable is after that intense moment that he has with Lala, it just cuts to him, like just him at the table with like 2 pounds of wings and 2 pasta dishes and like a brioche bun burger and a margarita pizza. He's just like sitting there eating wings,
angrily eating wings.
Yeah,
it's great. His face is almost the same color as like the fluorescent wing he's eating. I've never seen Schwartz that rattled. He was like, he was so pissed off. Oh my god.
Yeah. It's really fun to try to piece together, like just without any context, where do all these conflicts come from. The best I can figure is that every possible, at least heterosexual coupling in that group has happened, and everyone's just salty about it.
Yeah, well, a lot of the permutations, and one thing that like I think makes it especially interesting right now, how like tumultuous it is the fact that like Tom Schwartz and Katie, they were together for like 12 years, and Tom Sandoval and Ariana were together for like 9 or something like that. But yeah, there has been a lot of, spit swapping amongst them. Making out is like kind of the word of the season, and yeah, there's been at least that between a lot of the members of this group.
Yeah, plus James did literally spit on Lala in one episode too, so there's been that kind of spit swapping as well.
My main question is what is Lisa's role in this? Because in this episode anyway, it seems like it's like a mafia movie, and she's like the Paul Sorvino type, where the characters go to sort of sort their problems out, and then she's only in like a scene and disappears.
I would say like it's mostly like exposition at this point. Mm-hmm. In the past, she was the boss of the restaurant that they all worked at for like the first like 5 or 6 seasons. They were,
it makes so much sense to me,
bartenders and waitresses and so, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was the original concept.
Yeah. But so the idea behind the show was just following the drama of all the servers and bartenders, hooking up and stuff like that. But they like just found this super magnetic cast like right out of the gate. And so every time they tried to like bring in the new server staff, they just like kind of like faltered because everyone was still very engaged in the storylines of this original cast. So that's why, season 10, we still have the OGs of Vanderpump Rules. It's probably got the most OGs of any Bravo franchise.
Okay, yeah. So there's like, what's the churn like on this kind of stuff? Because like in like New Jersey, for example, I think I recognize like 2 or 3 people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, guess who's an original cast member
for Vanderpump? I mean, well, they do flashbacks, so you see like baby Sandoval.
Yep.
There's that. They flashback. I really love that scene. They flashback to like an argument he's having with, I guess, an ex.
Stassi.
And she's talking about like, you made out with her at the Golden Corral of all places.
The Golden Nugget. Yeah.
The Golden Nugget. And he just goes, I love the Golden Nugget.
So good. See, that was the golden era right there. I love that flashback to golden era Vanderpump Rules, because that like 10-second clip is better than entire seasons of TV shows. That just, I warmed my heart to see that again. Bring her back. We need Stassi back on the show. General amnesty. Yeah. I'm gonna become like one of those like return to tradition guys, but just for like bringing Stassi back on Vanderpump Rules. Just go on like just go in like Facebook groups and post like pictures of Stassi with the caption like, wow, really weird how nobody had like anxiety or COVID when she was on TV.
Get a marble statue of Stassi profile picture.
Oh my god.
But yeah, like Sandoval's got to be original. I guess if like probably Katie and Schultz, I would assume.
Schwartz,
sorry. James, I hope, has been around a long time.
So I think James arrived like season 3.
Okay.
I think, season 3.
Yeah, the rest, it's like...
Well, actually, you know what? I don't know why I know this, but he did appear as like in the background of a photo shoot that happens in like season 1 of Vanderpump Rules. So not main cast, but technically he's been there.
Is that him trying to get in? Yeah, I don't know. Those ones stand out to me just because like there's flashbacks and there seems to be so much history. I don't know.
Yeah,
I assume Lala's been around for a while.
Yeah, so I think James came like season 3 and Lala came season 4. But yeah, so this is a very mature like core cast. Mm-hmm. Did you have like any highlights in terms of like scenes or anything that comes to mind that really stood out to you from this episode?
Well, again, like I love Tom with his big table of food. I have a lot of like little things that stand out to me. Like I love how careful James is making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It has like multiple paper towels and just like really getting to the corner of the bread. And I'm wondering on the background, like how much of this is, hey, we need some B-roll. Can you make these sandwiches for a while while we set up for shot, reverse shot or something?
Yeah,
and how
it's a
much
classic. It's a classic thing to have like a discussion in an apartment and have somebody do something in the kitchen while they're talking. Just so, you have that. You have B-roll, you have them active, engaged in something, whether they're mixing drinks or they're assembling a sandwich. But I also found it really hilarious that it's like PB&Js and he's like, seems to be weirdly careful about it.
Yeah, his hangover breakfast. Just going to do PB&Js. And like just really getting in there. I love Beach Day.
Oh yeah.
I really like. Is it who's the? I take it he's Australian, like the beefcake, Bray or something.
Brock. Yeah,
Brock. Of course, yeah, Brock. Yeah, I really like. That seems like a little bit of the editors kind of having fun with them there. Like when it cut, they change the aspect ratio and the color grading when they start playing, and then it just cuts to like James taking the football right in the face. Love it. And that whole sequence stands out because I feel like, say James is really good at this, and his girlfriend, is it Allie?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Also really quite good, or someone's telling her to be quite good at driving the drum. Like after he throws the drink at one of the Toms, and she walks off and comes back. I think I went back and watched that scene several times. Like to me, that's drama.
Yeah, I loved in that scene the alliance that was immediately like struck between Charlie and Allie. Like Charlie just seems like such a great friend, and they had just met, but immediately like I don't know, they kind of bonded, and maybe it was because like they're in their 20s and everyone else is in their 40s or approaching 40s.
Okay.
But yeah, still I really enjoyed that they like were immediately kind of like magnetic. And Charlie has this season at least been kind of the main ally of Raquel. Maybe not the main ally, but she has been like very like team Raquel and like propping her up. So to see her also, strike up a friendship with James's current partner, who, James was previously engaged to Raquel.
Right.
Rachella. Rachella, yeah. It just like, I don't know, it really endeared me more to Charlie than I already like was. Like she's a very likable reality TV character, and I like that doesn't necessarily mean she's a very like good person to be on reality TV, but she is like very likable.
What I loved about that, though, is that Charlie was clearly like loving the drama and loving the fact that James threw a drink. And like you see her reaction right when it happens, huge grin breaks over her face, and she does like a pearl clutching like gesture, like grabbing at her throat, like, oh yeah, here we go. And I love how when she realizes that Allie's like pissed off that James is acting out this way, she takes Allie's side and she's like forcing herself to be like, yeah, that was not cool, while also clearly being like, that was fucking awesome.
The drink throw is just like such an iconic like Bravo move. So if you got to witness that in person, I would be so stoked.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Is there a long history of Bravo drink throws?
Especially on Vanderpump Rules, but yes, there definitely is. Like on pretty much every franchise, there have been drink throws that have driven various plots forward quite a bit. But to see Tom Schwartz get it, this is the first time he's actually been the recipient of it. But in the first like 2 seasons of Vanderpump Rules, he tossed a drink on Stassi, and he also like poured a drink over Katie's head. So he was due. So it was nice to see it like season 10.
Another great reaction, and I mean the immediate aftermath of the drink thrower, most people are just like, oh, how are we going to react? Is you just hear Lala say, this is so fun.
That was great. Yeah, my other note on that is, much like Satchel, do we know anything about the Dawn? Because there's that thing in the beach scene where Lala just goes, "Let's go, the Dawn."
Yeah, let's go with the Dawn, using the definitive article. Oh, and how awesome is it that the Dawn? Also, you're right. He's like Satchel. He's just showed up as a romantic interest. Like,
he has had like lots of lines in the one other episode that he was in.
Yeah, he showed up as like a really like courty, sexy dude, like just like making innuendos, and was just like he showed up as like the guy who like let that Lala got to like break her streak with. Like she hadn't slept with somebody for a while, but still hanging around, even though we don't get any lines of dialogue here. Still thought it was a very strong presence for him to show up at the beach, not just wearing socks, but prominently wearing socks. The man is like 100% confidence. I love him. He's great.
Okay, but this raised more questions for me because originally I thought like, oh, he's like the Don, like he's the Godfather. But the way they were talking about him this episode, it was like his name is actually Don. Like it's like the Don, like the Donald, like the subreddit for Donald Trump. Like, what is this like an allusion to?
I thought they've referenced him like as actually his name being Don, like Donald. Yeah,
they did this episode. I don't remember it before, but yeah, no.
I really hope it's just like a self-applied nickname.
It definitely is.
Oh yeah, it's just convenient.
Just so like unimaginative, like. We've got the Craig, the Dylan, and the Sean here.
The Sean, yeah, that's got a ring.
Let's go, the Sean. I would like that to be my Chiron.
Yeah.
Just have yours be the Sean, and mine will be a Dylan.
Sean, did you have any other updates? Or any other highlights?
Yeah, I mean mostly questions. I feel like the beach scene into the restaurant is really the meat of it for me. But yeah, I'm just like very curious about like Ariana and Katie's sandwich empire that they're starting. My first thing, as soon as they go in there and they're like, envisioning the decor, have they done anything food wise yet, or are they just doing decor? Because this feels very much like.
They don't have like an established menu yet. They know that like sandwiches is the thing, and they've got some way of like branding the sandwiches. But we got in the preview for the next episode that Katie's going to be going to Lisa Vanderpump's house to work on the sandwiches. For some reason, she's doing it there, and that's where where like Ken toddles out and drops the bombshell.
Yeah, which very salacious. What's Ken's deal? Is he like just old?
Okay, so Lisa Vanderpump used to have a dog named Jiggy.
I remember that from Beverly Hills because I remember Ken saying something along the lines of "They love his beautiful clothes and his beautiful face" or something like that.
Yeah,
that's tattooed in my brain.
Jiggy was dying,
said that like Hannibal Lecter.
They swapped brains between Jiggy and Ken, and so Ken has Jiggy's brain now.
Okay. Yeah, but I definitely got vibes in that scene of like, oh, these are like vision restaurateurs and not like, like owner-operator chef style.
Yeah, so I think that, yes, that's true, like in relation to other people within the restaurant industry, but in relation to their partners, our former partners, Sandoval and Schwartz, they are definitely like in the trenches, like serious business owners relative to what these guys are doing, like goofing around with it.
Yeah, sometimes Sandoval Lisa shows up to a work site with a pink hard hat on, so she means business.
There's a lot of allusions to Sandoval and Schwartz being like like failures of some kind. If they've opened a bar. What does James say? The corner of Silver Lake. I didn't make a note of
Oh
what he
yeah,
says,
I
but
can't remember what his line
like
was.
some
Yeah,
Silver Lake Pooh Village or something like that.
yeah.
Which it isn't even. It's in like old Hollywood, but I don't know what.
Yeah, so I get the sense that they like are running something into the ground.
Well, they have been like struggling to get this place open. So they've got a bar called Tom Tom, which is open, and they are like super minority partners in the restaurant, and like Ken and Lisa and their like business team handle most of it. And then so they wanted to like kind of break out from under Lisa Vanderpump and start their own thing where they're majority owners, and that's Sandy and Schwartz's, or Schwartz and Sandy's, and that's what they have been struggling to get up and running. So it's in this like strip mall, which from what I gather, everything in LA is a strip mall. Yeah, and so they've had this like lease that they've been paying into while they've been trying to get off the ground, and delay after delay is causing it to just not open.
Where does their money come from?
Well, they're TV stars in
Yeah.
the 10th season.
Right.
It's like a new ride at like Bravo Disney.
I would go to a Bravo theme park. Actually, on that
note. Did you have any other questions about the show that you had written down?
I mean, I'm mostly very curious about production. Like, is this single camera? First of all,
no.
Okay.
No, for sure. There's multiple cameras.
And then just like how like it feels very much to me like there's something just outside of frame that's pushing things, like pushing situations into happening. So like if you look at like for example in the restaurant scene where at one point like James is clearly lav mic'd because he's talking to Katie, and then later when it cuts he's not mic'd up anymore because they know maybe they know they don't need him or something. You can just kind of pick him up in like chatter. So how like how does a production thing work on an episode? Are they like saying, okay, now it's time for Katie and Schwartz to have an argument, so let's mic them up and get them in a room and like remind them like
yeah,
what's the
so
process?
they will like they won't go that far. Like if there's an event happening, they will let it play out, and it's your responsibility as someone who wants to stay on the cast to be able to kind of know what to do, with probably some coaching from like an associate producer beforehand, and because each of them will have like an associate producer or someone that is like um, who functions as kind of like their handler for
Right.
the duration of the season. But it's kind of your job to you know gather the information that you can and use it in a way that makes for effective television, and to manage your own position within the social hierarchy that you're oscillating in, as which is basically just all these shows are. You're jockeying positions and oscillating from like good guy to bad guy, and back again.
It's almost more like
But
hyper real TV. You can have
yeah,
like
I mean, reality is definitely like a misnomer. Like it's in this case, at least in the case of Bravo shows, it is not necessarily an accurate description of this uninterrupted reality. But like, I mean, it's not a documentary, but it is this like real narrative, and the people that are like on the cast and engaging in this, they do like there are actual like real stakes. So it does have that's grounded in reality. Like Tom Sandoval is probably, well, maybe not, but he's like potentially taking a hit in business to his restaurants because his reputation is in the tank because of the Sandoval that has happened. So there are
I wasn't familiar with Sandoval.
But yeah, there are like actual stakes, and these people are mindful about, actual real world consequences of their actions. So in that sense, it differs from, a fictional narrative uh, construct. But there's obviously like clear influences from production.
Yeah,
But I
like
think
it's
the fact
just
that
kind of
there
hyped
are
up a little bit.
I think the fact that there are still like real world consequences to your business, your reputation, um, your job on the show,
Your
um,
relationships too.
yeah, your relationships, like that all factors in.
Yeah, because there's that scene with like Lala and Katie, I think, where they're even talking about maybe it's Ariana, no, Raquel's reputation online, and they're showing like Twitter or Instagram screenshots, but like how those real consequences come out. Yeah, it feels to
Yeah,
me like just like real people and real interpersonal dramas that get a little bit tweaked up and like found in the edit, maybe.
yeah, for sure. There's a lot of like finding it in the edit and like stringing together bits and pieces in order to like weave a story together. And if something comes out later this season, trying to like dive into the footage and pull out things that you can use to sort of build the backstory for this. I think that's where you really see the the artistic merit of a producer or a editor really shine in a way that you don't see in other more traditional
Hmm.
narrative canvases. But you mentioned that you were not familiar with the term Scandival. So I want to like kind of get into that because that has
Hmm.
been the big bombshell that has blown up the Bravo sphere this year. Um, so did you do any sort of research into Vanderpump Rules this season before diving into the
No,
episode?
I wanted to go in totally cold. So I've
Okay.
only seen episode 12.
Okay, so this episode we're starting to get the hints of like what is going to what eventually blew up. Um so after like season 4 of this season had aired, it came to light that Tom Sandoval had actually been sleeping with Raquel for
Mhm.
like 8 months or something like that. Um and Ariana found out, and everything just like blew up kind of off camera. So they rushed production, or apparently they rushed production back in to, capture the fallout of this all blowing up. And that's what has been labeled like Scandival because
Okay.
Tom Sandoval and Ariana had been together for like 8 or 9 years at that point.
Yeah, and they really plant the seeds like all through this episode, because even when the Toms are going to the food truck, which by the way they are delightfully corny to that food truck employee. So we're first timers. We're excited. Because even in that, right, uh, drummer Tom, I keep wanting to call him Schwartz,
Yeah.
is saying stuff like, "Ah, like I don't know, I just feel like Raquel's got a crush on someone else." Oh, that was my
Right.
other stand-up, by the way. In that scene when Sandoval's talking about they're having like the most, and it depresses me that they're 40s because I was gonna call it the most like 19-year-old guy conversation. Where he's like I really love her and I want to I show her to her every day. I give her this. I don't remember exactly what he says. It's some kind of latte. I give her a
I think he
latte
says a
every day.
dumpling
Yeah.
latte. I
Yeah,
think.
I think it's a dumpling latte. Give her a dumpling
It's like,
latte every
does she
morning.
reciprocate?
No.
Yeah. I love that moment too, because it's like, whenever a couple is squabbling, it's always both people always feel like they're giving more than they're getting. That's like, I think that the root always of it. But the fact that the only example he can pull is I make her a
Roasting.
latte in the morning often.
Yeah.
Like, you're making a really weak case. But of course Schwartz is, gonna be the good buddy and gonna be like, wow, and does she reciprocate, Tom? Have you
He
thought
does seem like a
about
good
it?
friend.
Like, well, that's the thing. The one like most sustainable long-term relationship on the show is between the two Toms, and it's not entirely wholesome because a lot of dudes' relationships, it's mostly founded on like justifying each other's worst, most toxic behaviors. But in this episode, you really see how like that's kind of the one relationship that really does have real substance in the show, both in like Schwartz really playing ball to like let Sandoval feel like, you know, you're seen, your struggles in your relationship are seen, with the dumpling latte thing. Man, that's rough, dude.
When he goes with him for his jizz results, like that's
exactly that too. And the way he jumps in the call to talk to Ariana to kind of like be like, but you know what? It's actually great too. The morphology is not a big deal. You know, you can keep wearing those tight jeans. Yeah. And then later on, you see Sandoval, like when he's confronting Katie, which he's been doing a lot of, and he kind of like gets down to the fact, like, you know what, the way that Tom Schwartz talks about you and the way you talk about him, like it's like not on equal terms. And he's like gets kind of emotional about that too. And then that's, you know, another example of Sandoval being there, like, you know, I got my bros back too at the same time. So they've got that one like internally healthy relationship in the sense that they sustain each other, though the results are often just like promoting what shitty people they are, as everybody on the show is.
Oh, that's a good foundation on a bridge to a bad neighborhood.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you kind of like bring up that relationship as, you know, being so stable on this show, because like I can't think of any other dynamic between, you know, that kind of like toxic codependent, like prop each other up and enable each other's like toxic traits that you see on, you know, that's something that, you know, as just a dude, I've seen that, and you know, I think everyone has seen that and like kind of been in something that resembles that kind of dynamic, you know, maybe not to the extent that the Toms do, but you know, just like that dynamic as like a straight guy, that friendship, I immediately recognize that. And that's not something that you really see highlighted to the degree that you don't see that anywhere else on Bravo, at least. Maybe to an extent sometimes on Southern Charm, though not so much. But
I don't get that sense from New Jersey, certainly.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to get into this episode of New Jersey, but I think like New Jersey is a little bit different. I think like one of the things that I like about you know, about reading satire or science fiction is the way that they take like real world issues or like problems or dynamics or whatever, and just like crank the dial up in order to explore it, you know, very like plainly. And I think that the relationship between Tom Sandoval and Tom Schwartz is an example of like reality TV doing that, because like I haven't been in like a dude friendship that has been that level of, you know, feeding into the toxicity, but you know, I do recognize traits of that. So yeah, I really like that you bring that up, because I think that, you know, that kind of highlights how reality TV can function in the same way that like really good satire can and really good science fiction can.
Yeah, well, it's like, to bring it back to Dylan's Freudian analysis, it's just two straight guys really engaging in the id, upholding each other's id.
Yeah, grabbing each other by the id.
Awesome. Well, Dylan, what were your highlights from this episode?
I liked when Allie says, like, you know, it's really hard for me to adjust to this group because in my friend group, if you break up with somebody, you never see them and never talk to them again. And I'm like, Allie, that's because your friend group is high school. Like, how old are you? Seriously, she's hanging out with a bunch of 40-year-olds, and she's like, "Well, in my experience, what's your experience? Come on, like you're not talking about some people who called themselves twin flames because they gave each other hand jobs for a month after gym class. You're talking about people who've been married for the better part of a decade.
You try to make new friends in your 30s and 40s.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they're all hanging out together, because they're 40. They don't know how to make new friends. They can only know how to lose them. But yeah, the whole thing, like you said, Sean, starting at the beach and leading to all those confrontations in the restaurants was amazing. It was, everybody got so raw too. Like it was like people were getting really, like, their emotions were surface level. Really, I don't know what's going on. It must be the Santa Ana wind or something. But
it was the sun. LA was in a heat wave.
There you go. See, it's those ions in the air. That's what that is. But I did, like, as much as to circle back to James briefly this time, who I don't like. I did get a really funny episode. He was a really funny guy.
Just before you get into it, let's keep in mind that his first house was in Sagittarius, or Venus was in Sagittarius. So give him a little bit of a pass on this episode.
Does that mean Pluto is going to go into his Uranus?
Yeah.
But no, I just feel like even if you're comparing it to Jax is a piece of shit. But I thought Jax has a little bit more, like, reflection and enough of depth.
What?
Yes, I think that Jax was, like, actually thinking about his life a little bit, where I think James doesn't have that capability. I think he's just like two beady eyes and a flappy mouth.
No, I will bet you James is very much an in the moment type of person who, like, maybe his life doesn't. He has been
planning for years and years to get to a point where he's opening for Cascade.
I did like how rawly emotional he was at that insult, which, by the way, was a good insult by Tom Schwartz. It was a good line. Yeah. But yeah, the confrontation between them was just really funny, and I just like how you get a little preview of it when, like, Brock is throwing them the ball on the beach when they do the little Top Gun bit, and they're both, like, just fucking terrible at it, and then transition to this, like, clash of the Wieners, who are just like, and just the way, like, Schwartz can't respond to the drink being thrown in his face beyond being, like, the the standard, like, if you were to do it again, it might be different. I'd put you in a headlock. Yeah. If you put me in a headlock, I'd be out of it in 2 seconds. You're not stronger or faster than me. So great. And then James fucking getting straw in the eye and panicking and running out and falling, and they'll be like, oh no, it was like 150 proof alcohol, and the waitress is like, I think that's water. Yes. It was so amazing. And James just being like, he was starting in a strong position there, but then he's such a baby too. The way that he, like, starts calling for Laura to come, like, save him and be like, oh, Laura, back me up here. And then she comes in and is like, yeah, so I think what you did was weirdly out of line, but did you say but? She said but. You don't have my back.
I don't understand how you can give such, like, this, like, glowing endorsement of James and still, like, maintain your position of not liking him.
A lot of it has to do with the accent.
It is insufferable.
But he's just an insufferable man. He's just very grating. But he was hilarious this episode, so I will give him that. That was actually a very, very, very funny showing from him.
I really enjoyed how James like basically set Lala up for, like, a layup when he was like, it's like, oh, their ego's as big as my cock, and she's like, oh yeah, so really small, and he's like, yeah, right, and it seemed like genuinely, like, cut by it.
Yeah.
Like, he just, like,
she's, like,
served up that.
It.
Like, yeah, she's like, well, I came back for more, right?
Yeah. Repeat customer. Okay. I also love the awkwardness in that scene of, it's clearly, like, daytime, and James orders a cocktail, and Lala's just like, sparkling water.
Yeah.
I think this whole show runs on a lot of alcohol.
Yeah, well, the thing is, James has been like claiming that he's quitting drinking since he appeared on the show.
He says
and
it.
Lala actually has quit drinking.
Oh, I'm never drinking again.
He says that every episode.
Well, as they're like drinking water out of like an old vinegar bottle in their bed.
Keep a gallon of water like by your bed. You're not quitting drinking. Like, you have a routine down.
But yeah, I think that covers enough for me. But tons of great stuff. Great episode. Lots of fun.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into the Real Housewives of New Jersey. Sean, how was your like dipping your toe into Real Housewives again? What was that like for you?
It was magical. I loved it. It took me a bit. Like, I didn't realize that I knew like Teresa and Melissa until probably halfway through the first time I watched the episode. And then it clicked, like, oh yeah, Joe Judas or whatever. And the thing about her going to jail, I think, jogged my memory.
She's an icon. Like, I feel like Teresa is, if you say Real Housewives, like, she's got to be in the top 3 names that you think of.
Yeah, she's like kind of like a Dwayne Johnson, like maybe with beyond the Bravo a little bit.
Yeah.
Question on that: what is the reference to that one part of the mural where they call it iconic moment, and just like that I wasn't familiar with?
Yeah, so season 1 of Real Housewives of New Jersey, like, she like flipped up a table in the finale episode. Okay. And so like you might see like some memes of her like flipping a table over. It's a pretty like iconic image. Yeah, kind of a strange choice for Jen, but also it is like a very iconic moment. So, you know, it did elevate her to be like that's what like started her shooting star on the trajectory that it's been on.
And then I don't know if I have the name. Is it Melissa is like her sister-in-law or something?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So does that mean that stoned Joe Gorga is Teresa's brother?
Yes. Yeah.
You get it.
If I can go into that scene of the dudes it's like 8 guys named Joe.
Yeah.
And they're all wearing like fresh white tees. It's like a nice examination of my own prejudice, because they're starting that scene and I was like, this is a room full of men that I like would make me severely uncomfortable to be in. But then they all get super baked and are just eating like fried food out of to-go containers. Yeah. And Joe is like playing with that really like muscly guy's arm vein.
Yeah.
So wholesome. Yeah. And even I think the last line they cut on that little scene is like Joe Gorga saying that the girls aren't having this much fun, and like he couldn't be more right. Like, it's just so perfect. Yeah. And even in that, like, you could tell, because there's something going on with Danielle and someone else, right? Like, it's called someone a rat. And they're like they kind of start that drama with the husbands. I guess like Danielle's husband and someone else, like, oh, your wife called my wife a rat, but they're just all way too baked to do anything, so it seems like it just withers on the vine.
I think that's really interesting that you bring that up, like the husbands kind of trying to start that up, because like the husband dynamic is something that doesn't exist on other Real Housewives shows. So and both Danielle and Rachel are like brand new housewives to this series, and like these house husbands have been on the show for a long time, and the fact that, you know, no one else in the group like bites on it and just like lets it drop, they do a really good job, I think, of kind of like taking the lead from the other guys in the group. It's like, no, that's not what we need to do here. We need to just like get baked, get like super pumped about this food truck that has shown up, which is like awesome, by the way. I would love that.
Why did they need to go containers if it was parked on their property?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that too.
So wasteful.
You don't want to go inside the house because it's the worst house to be high in. Yeah. You see the leopards come to life. I don't smoke weed.
I see snakes. Yeah, loved the husband scene. I'm a huge fan of Irish Peter. and how he's just like carrying a drill around for most of the time. I don't know, like if you picked up on that, but, like his first when he goes to meet them, he's like pointing a power drill at them, and it's just sort of there. There's one little bit in that farm. Also, I did not know they were in Ireland until like 9 minutes into the episode when they actually mentioned it. I was like, oh, it's like St. Patrick's Day, and they're just all like partying. There's this one little bit that I think is like clever editing where it's just audio over B-roll of one of the housewives like, oh, how old's the farm? And Peter's like, oh, the farm's 200 years old. And then it cuts to one of the housewives that could be totally later being like, we're loving the culture. Really choice. I mean, most of the things I've written down are just like snippets of audio. I love Margaret's outfit for the whiskey tasting. I thought that was fabulous. That like tulle skirt and like diaphanous blouse.
Yeah.
And the hair clip that says feelings.
Speaking of outfits, I feel like we need to mention the Jen Fessler's outfit at the start of this episode, which was like kind of the focus of the tail end of the last episode. I was watching the tail end of the last episode when I was sitting in the Minneapolis airport waiting for a flight, and like the way that they were like focusing on everyone like taking like cell phone photos of her boobs and like her cleavage, it was like very uncomfortable for me, like just being like, it's not what it looks like. This is Real Housewives.
That was a guilty pleasure.
Not a perv. Not a perv.
My favorite outfit of the episode.
That's when you pull out your notebook and be like,
start sketching. My favorite outfit. Sorry, what's her name? Jen
Fessler. Yeah,
Fessler. Yeah, because her was just like Margaret's friend. My favorite outfit is when they're going to jump in the bog. Actually, I have a screen grab that I took of it that I'll send you later. But it's just like, I think it cuts to her going like, "Oh my god!" But she's wearing like, she's got some kind of, I don't know if it's a shirt she's like made into a headscarf or a big bonnet thing, and just like yoga wear. But that's my favorite outfit of hers. It's a frame that lasts for like, it's a few frames, right? It's a few seconds, but it's just like choice. I also feel like she is trying to get on the show because she is like really going for lines.
She's a bit try hard. You missed last week when she dropped some info. She slept with James Gandolfini, so she's got that going for her.
Before he died?
She didn't specify.
Presumably.
Yeah, the one that got away.
Yeah,
I think she actually says that at one point. She probably shouldn't have traumatized his cock so much.
I feel like she was. Again, it's probably all like alcohol related, but she's like trying to get her camera moments, like when they're in the whiskey tasting thing and the dinner, and she keeps leaning over to. Is it the other Jen, maybe? I really like what we've going on. Just like always has something to add.
Yeah, right. The Jens were seated together, yeah, she's got real stand-up comedian vibes. She's a
yes.
She almost I mean, she's like the Jewish one too. That's kind of part of her thing. She almost has like a prop cigar sometimes when she's talking. Like, yeah, well, the thing about that is, guys, she's very like Catskills, like Catskills club comic. Just wearing like a shabby suit of tails, shuffling around.
The one other like line that is just repeating in my head is again from the mural scene. Melissa paints like that wonderful red bordered Italian flag and the stick figure family, and she's like getting emotional. But the line that sticks out to me is, "It's just so sad to me that this is a family." And that's the whole thought, and I don't know what that means.
But that's what's so great about like these Italians with their strong but very delicate family roots. Anybody could just say the word family in this group, and at least 3 women will spontaneously start crying.
Yeah, it's like Danielle has that whole thing. I don't know what something is going on with her.
It's with her brother. Yeah. If these women went to see like a Fast and the Furious movie, they would just be like dissolved into a puddle of tears on the ground by the
end. Oh yeah. Also, like, I want to see a reality show about Irish Peter's life outside of work, because like. Again, so I spend a lot of my life working in like service industry and often serving excited groups of like housewife types who are maybe doing a hen party or whatever. And the vibe I get from Peter is like if I had to work in the Canadian themed restaurant from Gremlins 2, I would probably have like a kind of a bleak life outside of that, and I just really want to see what Peter's life is like. I want to spin off of that.
I mean, yeah, it's not fun to have to fill out the fish right at their table. Love that line in that movie. But also a very pro move from Peter to bring out a puppy when he sees somebody sad. He's just got that ready to go. Just kind of in his like his back pocket. Just like, somebody's crying. Time to whip out the puppy.
This makes them feel better.
Yeah, people like puppies, and he's right. It worked.
Oh yeah, of course. How's it not going to work?
I mean, this should be obvious. I have to ask though. What did Teresa go to jail for?
It was tax fraud. So
okay.
Apparently it was like Joe Judas's fault. He was filing false returns or something like that. But yeah, she spent 11 months in prison.
Another Joe for you.
Yeah. So I mean, I was obviously jumping
Juicy Joe. A juicy one.
Here for this. I was like hoping it was going to be kind of a mobbed up thing, but wishful thinking.
Yeah, it's like she was the first housewife to go to jail, but I like it's not as like hard as Jen Shaw, who is now the second housewife to go to jail, who is in jail also for fraud, but she was like defrauding seniors on those like phone scams. She those calls that you get. Yeah. So she ran like a pyramid. She was the head honcho of that. And now she's in jail. Apparently putting on a play called Real Housewives of Bryan, and Bryan is the facility that she's in. So hoping that we get to see clips of that somehow.
Yeah. Well, because like smuggled cell phone footage of that.
Yeah.
Bravo's got to own the rights to that, right?
Yeah, they own putting on. So.
Yeah. Dylan, what about you? What were your highlights?
I loved Jen Aiden in this episode. I thought she was amazing. I thought it was a great episode for her. I need to return to the mural drawing because it was like my favorite part of the episode. I loved how they show her after she drew this sketch of angry Teresa, like kind of like admiring her work, and she kind of like gets into the character and does a little sign, kind of feeling the emotion, and then just like very like self-satisfied and confidently nodding and be like, yes, the energy is there.
And she puts hers on like a different part of the wall, so like it stands on its own.
Yeah,
like, this is where my work.
And remains totally proud of it, even though everybody else is like, you misread the assignment, Jen. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. And it's just like, it cannot be knocked off her pedestal there. She's just so proud of her work. And she has right to be. It was a beautiful, beautiful drawing.
It was interesting because like out of almost anyone else in the cast, that probably would have set Teresa off. Like it would have been seen as, a dig, and like she was even crying before they started painting about, these girls might draw like prison bars and like use this as an opportunity to roast me. And I think, that was kind of whether intentional or not, a smart move by Teresa to, shut down the opportunity for anyone to really use it to take a swipe at her. And I guess like Jen doing that was, maybe good. She knew that like she's in good enough with Teresa, like she could do something like
It's
this
kind of
and
a
it will be
risky
taken
move.
lighthearted. Yeah, it
Just because she's
is.
trying to court like Teresa's friendship, and like you said, after Teresa's like, please don't draw bars,
Only
she's
happy
like,
memories.
yeah, she's just all going for it, and I just think she's a true artist. Her art trumps her strategy here. And I also love how Teresa seems to be making a conscious effort not to look at it, but she's like, don't really care for that one. It's like keeping her head turned away. And also when Jen just gets like keeling over drunk during the whiskey tasting, was like, she's just adorable. She's just very very cute this episode, and but also like that's what I would do too at a whiskey tasting. Like what's good, and the guy there, I do like the trope of having like an expert come in and like show the housewife stuff. And, sometimes they kind of get into character and they'd be like, oh, it's showtime, I'm on TV. Like, let's crack some jokes, ladies. Am I right? And this guy just seemed like impatient with them. Just like
he couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Oh yeah. He was just like, I'm done with these fucking Americans. I don't want to do this.
Change your flight, cilantro gone.
But also like, why are you pouring out like 8 ounces of whiskey per person or whatever, and then just being like, take a little sip off the top and throw the rest in a glass? What's the deal with that? I get that it's like the sideways thing where it's like you're supposed to just slosh it around in your mouth and spit it out. The rest of the glass is for show or whatever. But that's probably like very expensive whiskey, I assume. That's the point of the tasting, right? So it's like high quality stuff. Why even pour out that much if you're just
alluding to a Paul Giamatti movie is a very serious thing in Italian families, so be careful.
Oh shit! Edit that out. That's gonna be. They're gonna read that as a slur. Fuck. Margaret will come for me on that one. But yeah, I'll just say that like I would absolutely finish those shots, even if I didn't want to. Even if I didn't want to be drunk, I would be like, I'm not wasting this. I'm drinking it. And was just having a good time. That was a lot of fun. Oh, and I loved when she was drunk and Danielle starts talking, and she's worried that Danielle's going to give out her secret before she has the chance to use it strategically. And like you could just see her like kind of peering through the fog of drunkenness, being like, oh God, do I have to do something to stop this? Oh fuck.
What is like what's going on with Danielle, and I think it's Margaret? There's something there at the end, right?
Yeah, so mostly the beef, the main beef is between like Jen and Margaret. Margaret is very concerned because Jen has talked to one of Margaret's like former friends and is, I guess, kind of building up an arsenal of her own. But she knows that Margaret has like told this friend of hers that Melissa Gorga was apparently seen getting out of the back of a limo and or making out with some other guy. And so this like little piece of like bombshell information that just Margaret had, but now Jen has the information that Margaret has like disseminated this to someone else. So that's where the tension is. But on this trip, last episode or the episode prior, Jen let Danielle know this information. So that's why she was worried that it was going to come out and she'd have to like, be like activated when she was like way too drunk to handle that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like the bomb waiting to go off in this season, I think, is that piece of information.
Yeah, so it feels like they sort of constructed around one or two like really big deal conflicts they just build up to.
Like a season, you mean?
Yeah.
It kind of depends.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, ideally there's something that is going to kind of grab the attention outside of the fandom in a way that Sandoval has. But I'd say that that's like exceedingly rare that would happen. Usually there is like, one or two kind of like major within the scope of the show conflicts or just storylines that kind of drive the action through the series. And
Well, I guess like
then like a
Teresa's
lot.
wedding is probably a big thrust of this,
Yeah.
right?
So that like in general, if a housewife is getting married or like someone on the cast is getting married, that will be used as kind of a vehicle for a lot of the conflict. And to an extent, it is happening on this season. That's mostly just because Melissa Gorga is always kind of grasping at Teresa for storylines, so she is using being left out of the wedding party as, you know, the major slight against her and Joe. That's
Okay.
kind of driving things.
That
Um,
explains the close-up when Teresa says something about wanting people to be in the wedding. Cut to Melissa
Which
yeah.
was so
and her
funny
like,
how she implies she's inviting her to the wedding. Be like, I just feel like I want you guys to somehow be involved in the wedding. Like, are you inviting her to the wedding? Well, no, but I want peace. That's so funny.
in theory, it would be nice.
Yeah.
Well, they are invited. They're just not in the wedding party.
Yeah,
Is
not part of
like
it.
the big
Right.
thing. Yeah. And you could almost feel like Melissa's nervousness at like, you know, Teresa having this like very like emotional moment and platform, and like this is the perfect opportunity if she wants to invite Melissa. Like this would only go over well for Teresa to like
Yeah.
extend that olive branch, and this is like the perfect end to that story. And Teresa could use that as an out. She doesn't need to, but she could. Um, you could almost feel like Melissa being nervous, like, okay, well, like, what else am I going to bring to the table? If,
Yeah, Melissa
you
doesn't want
know,
that. Melissa doesn't want
yeah,
that.
no, Melissa and Joe definitely do not want that.
Yeah,
That's
they're
their
entrenched
leverage.
they're entrenched in dragging this out as a conflict. So yeah, that would, you're right. Melissa would almost be panicked if Teresa was like, "I want you at their wedding party," because that's not what she wants.
In a situation where she can't really say no, like
Yeah.
she is kind of like, you know, it's like, okay, she has like she's kind of like built this this, you know, sub story where it's like, oh, okay, I recognize the value of family. We're in like a good place. There's a point earlier in the episode where, you know, Teresa even acknowledges the fact that like Melissa was really good with her parents. Like she's like, oh yeah, they were always she was always really good. So I feel like Melissa was kind of like in an under or a position where she basically couldn't say no and still hold any sort of leverage. So the fact that, you know, Teresa was like, well, no, I'm not actually asking you to be in the wedding.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know whether that's like Teresa being like a savvy housewife and being like, we still need conflict, or if that is her just being like, no, I legitimately like don't actually want you guys in the wedding. But either way, I think like for a viewer, that is, you know, the outcome that we, you know, could hope for an interesting season.
Yeah.
So like Teresa and Melissa have had something for a long time, I take it.
Yeah, since the beginning. I think like Melissa joined the cast like season 3 of New Jersey, so she's been on there for 10 years at this point now, but it's always like at the root of it been like a conflict between like families. That's kind of the core of what New Jersey is. And it's interesting, like I don't think there's any other franchise that has the same sort of like I might have mentioned this on the last episode, but like the fans really like draw battle lines, whether you're like one of Melissa's fans or if you're on Teresa's side and you're like a tree hugger, as Teresa fans call. But like I don't think that there's any other housewives where people will like align themselves with and entrench themselves with like that camp more than New Jersey. And like New Jersey is like a popular housewives franchise, but like it is not the most popular franchise. It's like, you know, it's in the upper half of popularity, but like none of the other very popular Real Housewife franchises have that sort of like allegiance. So it's really interesting to see that dynamic, come off of the screen and play out within the fandom.
Mm-hmm.
Dylan, did you have any other highlights from this episode?
No, that about covers the main bits.
Awesome. I think we talked about pretty much everything that I was hoping to talk about on this episode as well. Awesome. Well, I was very stoked to have you on here, Sean. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you and follow you?
I'm Sean's Haircut. My Instagram's private. I probably won't approve you, but you can follow me on Letterboxd if you want one-sentence joke reviews of the movies I watch. I don't know. As a plug, if you feel safe and comfortable doing it, go see live music and comedy and movies in independent theaters. I don't produce anything myself, so.
Awesome.
Or remove one plug from next week's guest.
Yeah. Awesome. Dylan, how about yourself?
As usual, you can find back episodes of my horror movie podcast, Mind Over Splatter, and I write about movies on Substack.
Awesome. I'm Craig Midwinter. This has been Bravo Outsider. You can find us online at bravooutsider.com. We're on Instagram at Bravo Outsider, on TikTok at Bravo Outsider, and on YouTube. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next week, keep on wifing.
Keep on wifing. Stravinsky.